First contact. The void between stars held no terror for Thanax. As the most accomplished hunter of the Krivak species, he had spent centuries perfecting his craft across 1,000 worlds. His bioluminescent markings, pulsing with a deep purple glow, reflected off the crystalline walls of his hunting vessel's bridge. Each pattern told the story of a successful hunt, of prey that had challenged him and fallen. Until today, he had never questioned his role in the galaxy's great chain of predation. The Krivaks were supreme hunters, evolved over millions of years to be the perfect synthesis of biological and technological advancement. Their neural interfaces allowed them to control their ships with thought alone. Their adaptive camouflage made them invisible to most species, and their regenerative abilities meant they could survive almost any injury. Thanax's ship, the Silent Talon, glided through space on an approach vector to a small mining outpost on the fringes of known space. His quarry was supposed to be simple, a newly discovered species that had just achieved faster-than-light travel. His mission was to assess their potential as prey, as the Krivaks had done countless times before. The outpost orbited a harsh desert world, its metallic structure crude by Krivak standards. Thanax's initial scans showed minimal defenses and primitive technology. He felt almost disappointed. This would hardly be worth recording in his hunting logs. "Begin standard infiltration protocol," Thanax commanded, his deep voice resonating through the neural interface. The Silent Talon's adaptive hull shifted, matching the electromagnetic signature of the local space debris. He would observe these creatures first, understand their weaknesses, then decide if they were worthy of becoming proper prey. The first peculiarity struck him as he monitored their communications. These humans, as they called themselves, spoke constantly to each other. Not just about tasks or threats, but about abstract concepts, sharing stories, and what they called jokes. Most prey species communicated only out of necessity, but these humans seemed to draw strength from their endless chatter. Thanax watched as a small crew in primitive environmental suits worked on the outpost's exterior. Their movements were inefficient, their tools rudimentary. Yet there was something about their methodology that gave him pause. They weren't just repairing the station. They were improving it, adapting it, using materials in ways their designers had never intended. His fascination grew when a meteoroid shower suddenly threatened the outpost. By all logical calculations, the humans should have retreated inside, abandoned the repairs, and accepted their losses. Instead, they did something that made Thanax's neural sensors buzz with disbelief. They started improvising, using nothing but handheld tools and what appeared to be mining explosives. The humans created a crude but effective defense grid. They detonated precise charges to deflect the larger meteoroids, while simultaneously completing their repairs. It was chaos by Krivak standards, yet there was a brilliant madness to their methods. Thanax moved his ship closer, his curiosity overwhelming his usual caution. That was his first mistake. A human female, suspended on a tether, turned and looked directly at where his invisible ship hovered. She shouldn't have been able to detect him. His camouflage was perfect, his energy emissions masked. Yet somehow she knew. "Hey," her voice crackled over the open communication channel. "If you're done playing hide and seek, we could actually use a hand with these repairs." For the first time in his long life, Thanax felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. The human had not only detected him but was treating him not as predator or prey, but as a potential ally. "Your technology cannot detect this vessel," Thanax responded, his translator converting his thoughts to their primitive language. The human laughed. Actually laughed. "Maybe not, but the meteoroids are bouncing off something out there. And unless space has suddenly developed corners, I'm betting it's your ship." Thanax's luminescent patterns flickered with confusion. The human was right. He had inadvertently deflected several small meteoroids, creating the subtle pattern in the debris field. But most species would have fled at the mere possibility of an invisible alien ship. This human instead chose to initiate conversation. "You are not afraid," Thanax stated, his neural interfaces struggling to process this abnormal behavior. "Oh, I'm terrified," the human replied cheerfully. "But we got about 20 minutes before the station's shield generators overload, and I'm betting whatever brought you here can wait that long. So, how about it? Help now, mysterious alien standoff later." Thanax found himself moving before his conscious mind had fully processed the decision. The silent talon's energy beams activated, precisely vaporizing incoming meteoroids. He told himself it was merely to prolong his observation of these strange creatures. Yet as he watched the humans cheer and immediately incorporate his assistants into their plans, he realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. These humans didn't just survive. They adapted, improvised, and somehow turned every disadvantage into an opportunity. They treated an apex predator as a potential collaborator without hesitation. Their technology was primitive, but their minds were anything but. As the meteoroid shower subsided and the station stabilized, Thanax received another transmission from the human female. "Thanks for the help. I'm Sarah, by the way. Would you like to come aboard for coffee? Fair warning. Our airlocks are probably pretty cramped for someone your size, but we're working on that too." Thanax's hunting patterns glowed with a new color, one that had never appeared before. It wasn't the mark of a successful hunt, but rather the beginning of a profound realization. These humans weren't prey. They were something else entirely, something that defied the very categories the Kryvax had used to classify species for millennia. For the first time in his hunting career, Thanax decided to decline a hunt not out of mercy or disinterest, but out of a dawning recognition that some species transcend the simple dynamics of predator and prey. As he prepared to depart, he made his first entry into a new kind of log, not a hunting record, but a warning to future generations of Kryvax hunters. "Humans," he recorded, "are not to be hunted. Not because they are weak, but because they are something we have never encountered before, a species that turns uncertainty into opportunity, chaos into advantage, and potential enemies into allies. They are not prey. They are not predators. They are something else entirely, and we would be wise to remember that." Decades after his first encounter with humans, Thanax found himself drawn back to their space. His luminescent patterns had grown more complex over the years, each new marking telling not of successful hunts, but of observations that challenged everything the Kryvax thought they knew about the natural order. The silent Talon drifted in high orbit above Helios 6, a planet that should have been impossible to colonize. The atmosphere was corrosive. The surface temperatures fluctuated between extremes that would kill most species, and the constant electrical storms made conventional shields useless. Yet there it was, a human mining colony, not just surviving but thriving in conditions that would make even Kryvax hunters hesitate. Thanax's neural interfaces buzzed with incoming data as he studied the colony's structure. The humans had done something unprecedented. They'd adapted their entire operation to work with the planet's hostile environment, rather than against it. Their buildings weren't fighting the electrical storms. They were using them for power. The corrosive atmosphere wasn't being filtered out entirely. It was being partially processed for valuable minerals. Fascinating, he murmured to himself, his ship's sensors recording every detail. They turned their greatest threats into resources. A sudden surge in atmospheric disturbance caught his attention. A massive storm system was forming, far larger than anything in his previous observations. The colony's warning sirens began blaring, audible even through the vacuum of space thanks to his enhanced sensors. Thanax expected an evacuation order. Instead, he watched in astonishment as the humans began extending massive conductor arrays, deliberately attracting the storm's electrical energy. Their shield systems, primitive but cleverly modified, created a channeling effect that was actually drawing power from the devastation. Then something went wrong. One of the primary conductors exploded in a spectacular burst of energy, creating a cascade failure through the colony's power grid. Emergency systems activated, but Thanax could see they wouldn't be enough. The storm's intensity was overwhelming their backup systems. For the second time in his life, Thanax found himself faced with a choice that went against every instinct of his species. The Silent Talon systems were more than capable of helping stabilize the situation, but revealing himself meant violating the most sacred rule of hunting: never interfere with potential prey. His decision was made when he detected human life signs moving toward the damaged conductor rather than away from it. They were going to attempt repairs in the middle of the storm. The Silent Talon descended through the turbulent atmosphere, its advanced shields easily handling conditions that were overwhelming the colony's defenses. As his ship became visible, Thanax expected panic. Instead, the repair crew barely seemed surprised by his appearance. "Well, look who finally decided to stop lurking," a voice crackled through his communication system. The speaker was an older human male, his environmental suit scarred by years of exposure to the hostile environment. "You're that same visitor from the station incident, aren't you? Sarah mentioned you might be watching us." Thanax's patterns pulsed with surprise. "You remembered. Hard to forget a friendly neighborhood invisible alien," the human replied. "I'm Marcus. We've got about 10 minutes before those conductor failures trigger a resonance cascade through the whole colony. Feel like helping out again?" Without waiting for a response, Marcus began coordinating his repair team, automatically factoring in Thanax's ship as if it had always been part of their emergency procedures. The humans moved with practiced efficiency, but what struck Thanax most was their complete lack of hesitation in trusting an alien predator with their survival. The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The Silent Talon's energy beams provided precise cutting and welding capabilities, while its shields helped protect the repair crews. The humans, for their part, demonstrated an almost instinctive ability to adapt their plans on the fly, incorporating Thanax's capabilities in ways he hadn't even considered. As the crisis subsided and the colony's systems stabilized, Thanax found himself invited to land. This time, he accepted. The landing bay had been hastily modified to accommodate his ship, another example of human adaptability. As he emerged, his towering form dwarfing the humans around him, he noticed something remarkable. They weren't cowering or maintaining a fearful distance. Instead, they were already discussing ways to improve their conductor systems based on what they'd observed of his ship's technology. "Your species continues to confound me," Thanax admitted to Marcus as they walked through the colony. "You establish outposts in places that should be uninhabitable, then treat every disaster as an opportunity for improvement. Even now, you show no fear of me, despite knowing what I am." Marcus shrugged. A gesture Thanax had learned indicated casual dismissal of a concern. "Fear is a luxury we can't afford out here. Besides, anyone who shows up to help during an emergency gets the benefit of the doubt, tentacles or no tentacles. I am a hunter," Thanax felt compelled to point out. "My species is known throughout the galaxy as apex predators. And we're a species known for turning apex predators into household pets," Marcus replied with a grin. "But more importantly, you're someone who chose to help when you didn't have to. That says more about you than any biological classification." As Thanax toured the colony, his neural interfaces recording everything, he realized he was documenting something unprecedented in Kryvak's history. These humans weren't just surviving in impossible conditions. They were rebuilding their definition of what was possible. Every failure was treated as a learning opportunity, every crisis as a chance to improve. When he finally returned to his ship, Thanax added a new entry to his growing record of human observations. They do not merely adapt to survive. They survive to adapt, viewing every challenge as an opportunity for growth. In doing so, they have achieved something no other species has managed. They have made uncertainty itself into their natural habitat. Kryvak's hunting patterns glowed with youthful arrogance as he led his squad of young Kryvak's warriors through the asteroid field. Their ship, the Swift Claw, was smaller than traditional hunting vessels, but faster and more heavily armed. Perfect, they thought, for proving the elders wrong about humans. "Look at it," Krevik sneered, his neural interfaces projecting an image of their target. A solitary human transport ship lumbering through space. Primitive design, minimal armament. The elders have grown soft if they fear such prey. His squadmates' patterns pulsed in agreement. They had all heard the warnings, especially those from the legendary hunter Thenax, about avoiding human targets. But young Kryvax warriors were expected to prove themselves through hunting, and what better way than by succeeding where their elders claimed success was impossible. Multiple cargo signatures, reported Mrika, their sensor specialist. But their shield emissions are strange. I can't get a clear reading. Irrelevant. Krevik dismissed. Begin the approach. Standard hunting pattern. The swift claw sliced through space, its advanced camouflage systems rendering it invisible to conventional sensors. As they drew closer, they intercepted fragments of human communications, casual conversations, complaints about card games, someone arguing about proper food preparation techniques. It seemed impossible that such an undisciplined species could be as dangerous as the elders claimed. Targeting solutions locked, announced Trebak, their weapons officer. We can disable their engines with the first volley. Krevik's patterns glowed with anticipation. Fire. The swift claw's energy weapons lashed out, precise beams designed to cripple the human vessel's propulsion systems. The shots connected perfectly, and did absolutely nothing. Impossible, Trebak hissed. Direct hits confirmed, but no damage registered. Their hull, it's not what it appears to be. Before they could process this development, the human ship's apparently decorative external plates began to shift and transform. What had looked like cargo containers revealed themselves as weapon ports. The lumbering transport was suddenly bristling with armaments that no civilian vessel should possess. This is Captain Elena Chen of the UNSC Trojan Horse, a calm voice transmitted on all frequencies. I'm guessing you folks are new to this whole interspecies hunting thing, so I'll give you one chance to back off before things get interesting. Krevik's patterns flared with rage. They dare threaten us. Fire everything. Show them why the Krevaks are feared across the galaxy. The swift claw unleashed its full arsenal, energy beams, and plasma torpedoes lighting up space. The human ship made no attempt to evade. Instead, its strange hull seemed to absorb the attacks, each impact causing geometric patterns to ripple across its surface. Have it your way, Captain Chen's voice returned, still frustratingly calm. Learning experience it is. What happened next would haunt the young Kryvax hunters' nightmares for years to come. The human ship's hull didn't just defend against their attacks, it somehow stored the energy and reflected it back in devastating pulses. Each shot they had fired was returned with precision, but with modifications that made their own weapons more effective against their shields. They're not just using our attacks against us, Mrika realized, her patterns pulsing with fear. They're improving them. The swift claw's shields buckled under the onslaught. Secondary systems began failing as the humans systematically dismantled their defenses. They hadn't just prepared for Kryvax hunters. They had specifically designed countermeasures that turned their greatest strengths into vulnerabilities. Impossible, Krevik whispered as his tactical displays showed multiple hull breaches. Their prey. They should be running. About that, Captain Chen's voice returned. See, we've been studying your hunting patterns for years. Every attack, every ambush attempt. We learn from them all. Did you really think we'd keep running? We're humanity. We adapt. The final blow came not from weapons, but from something far more insidious. The humans transmitted a signal that somehow interfaced with their neural systems, temporarily disrupting the biotech connections that were fundamental to Kryvax hunting techniques. For terrible moments, they were blind, disconnected from their ship's systems. When their senses returned, they found their ship ensnared in some kind of energy web, completely immobilized. The human vessel loomed over them, its transformed hull now making it appear every bit the predator they had foolishly thought themselves to be. Here's what's going to happen, Captain Chen explained, her tone now that of a teacher addressing particularly slow students. We're going to escort you back to Krevek space. You're going to tell your friends what happened here. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start paying attention to why your elders warned you about hunting humans. As the swift claw was towed through space like captured prey, Krevik finally understood what Thanax's warnings had meant. Humans weren't simply prey that had learned to fight back. They were something else entirely, a species that turned the very act of being hunted into an opportunity to become better hunters themselves. One more thing, Captain Chen added, almost as an afterthought. That neural disruption signal we used. We developed that after studying the hunting party that tried this last month. So really, you should thank your predecessors. Their failure helped us improve our defenses considerably. In that moment, Krevik's hunting patterns changed forever, adding a new marking that all young Krivaks would eventually learn to recognize. The mark of one who had learned why humans were not prey, but rather something the galaxy had never seen before. Prey that had learned not just to fight predators, but to become better than them at their own game. Thanax's patterns pulsed with urgency as the Silent Talon pushed its engines to their limit. The message he'd intercepted from the Bloodfang clan was clear. They planned to attack the human colony on Nexus Prime, not for hunting glory, but to prove their superiority over both humans and their fellow Krivaks. The Bloodfang clan had always been different, valuing dominance over the traditional hunting codes. Their leader, Vrakath, had openly mocked Thanax's warnings about humans, calling him weak and corrupted by too much contact with lesser species. Now they were about to make a mistake that could ignite an interstellar war. As the Silent Talon approached Nexus Prime, Thanax detected the Bloodfang fleet already in position, 5 heavily armed hunting vessels surrounding the colony. Their neural signatures burned with aggressive intent, their patterns showing none of the respect a true hunter should have for their quarry. Vrakath, Thanax transmitted, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of experience. Stand down. You do not understand what you're dealing with. The great Thanax. Vrakath's response dripped with contempt. Come to protect your pet humans. You've grown soft, old one. We've studied their defenses. They cannot stand against our combined might. You've studied nothing. Thanax replied. You see their outer shell, but miss the steel beneath. This is your final warning. Vrakath's only response was to order his fleet to open fire. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes rained down on the colony, creating a spectacular light show that illuminated the planet's atmosphere. But when the barrage ended, the Bloodfang clan discovered what Thanax had learned years ago. Humans were never what they appeared to be. The colony's seemingly primitive structures began to transform. What had looked like atmospheric processors revealed themselves as weapon platforms. Mining equipment reconfigured into defense systems. Even the colony's waste recycling units demonstrated deadly purpose, launching clouds of metallic particles that formed into swarms of autonomous defensive drones. Impossible, Vrakath snarled. Their technology is inferior. No, Thanax corrected, watching as the humans' preparations unfolded. Their technology is adaptable. Everything they build serves multiple purposes. They do not think like predators, always showing their strength. They think like survivors, hiding their true capabilities until they're needed. The colony's counterattack was devastating in its efficiency. Each defensive system seemed specifically designed to counter Krivak's hunting techniques, as if they had been preparing for this exact scenario for years. The Bloodfang fleet's superior weapons found themselves turned aside by shields that adapted to each attack, while precise counterstrikes targeted vulnerabilities in Krivak's ship design that shouldn't have been known to any outside species. How? Vrakath demanded as his fleet's coordination began to falter. How do they know our weaknesses? Because, Thanax explained, his patterns showing not triumph but sadness at the lesson being taught. Every time someone like you attacks them, they learn. They adapt. They improve. Each failure to hunt them makes them stronger. As if to prove his point, the colony launched a new type of weapon, microscopic drones that attached themselves to the Bloodfang ship's hulls. interfering with their neural interfaces. The proud hunters found their connection to their vessels disrupted, their sophisticated technology reduced to useless metal by enemies they had dismissed as primitive. "You see now?" Thanax asked as the Bloodfang fleet retreated in disarray. "Humans are not prey because they refuse to accept that role. They take every attack, every challenge, every attempt to hunt them, and turn it into an opportunity to evolve." But the humans weren't finished teaching their lesson. As the Bloodfang ships fled, they found their retreat cut off by a squadron of Earth warships emerging from FTL. They had been waiting in reserve, allowing the colony to demonstrate its defenses before revealing humanity's full strength. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen," a familiar voice transmitted. "Remember me, Thanax? That engineer you helped years ago. I've moved up in the world." Thanax's patterns glowed with recognition. "You knew they were coming." "We've been tracking the Bloodfang clan's movements for months," Sarah confirmed. "Could have stopped them sooner, but sometimes the best lesson is letting someone make their own mistake." Speaking of which, the Earth ships launched a final volley, not of weapons, but of data. Information flooded the Bloodfang clan's neural networks, detailed records of every failed attempt to hunt humans, analyses of Krivak's tactical patterns, and predictions of future strategies. They had not just defeated the hunters, they had studied them, understood them, and learned to think like them. "You see, Vraketh," Thanax said quietly, "this is why we do not hunt humans. Not because we cannot kill them, but because every attempt to do so teaches them more about us. They are not prey that runs. They are not predators that simply fight. They are scholars of survival, and we have been unwittingly teaching them for generations." The Bloodfang fleet limped away, their patterns dulled with the shame of defeat. But Thanax remained, watching as the colony's defenses returned to their disguised state, once again appearing primitive and vulnerable. "You could have destroyed them," Thanax observed to Sarah. "We could have," she agreed. "But that's not our way. We prefer to educate. Speaking of which, would you like to come down to the surface? We finally figured out how to make those airlocks comfortable for someone your size." Thanax's patterns rippled with what might have been amusement. "You never stop improving, do you?" "Never," Sarah confirmed. "It's kind of our thing." In the sacred halls of the Krivak's Great Hunt, Thanax's patterns glowed with the wisdom of centuries as he addressed the gathered young hunters. His luminescent markings told stories that no other Krivaks could match, not of successful hunts, but of lessons learned and wisdom gained. "You come before me seeking knowledge of prey," his voice resonated through the neural interfaces connecting all present. "But today, I will teach you about something far more important, knowing when not to hunt." The young hunters' patterns flickered with confusion and mild protest. They had heard rumors of this lesson, whispers about the great Thanax's strange obsession with humans. Some thought he had grown weak, others believed he had lost his edge. All of them were wrong. "Show them," Thanax commanded, and the hall's holographic systems activated, displaying scenes from countless failed attempts to hunt humans. The young hunters watched in stunned silence as species after species, hunter after hunter, failed not just to defeat humans, but fundamentally misunderstood what they were dealing with. "You see only their failures," Thanax continued. "But notice, observe closely, what happens after each defeat. Watch how humans change, adapt, improve. Every failed hunt makes them stronger. Every attack teaches them more about their attackers. They are the only species in known space that treats survival not as a goal, but as a process of continuous evolution." He showed them footage from his own encounters, the space station repair, the mining colony, the Bloodfang clan's humiliation. With each scene, the young hunter's patterns shifted from dismissal to uncertainty to something approaching understanding. "But surely," one young hunter named Crix interrupted, her patterns bright with ambition. "With enough force, enough hunters." "You still don't understand," Thanax cut her off, not unkindly. "Let me show you something few outside humanity have ever seen." The holographic display shifted to show a human archive, historical records of their development on their home world. The young hunters watched as humans evolved from prey animals into tool users, from scavengers into apex predators of their own world. Look closely, Thanax instructed. See how they did not simply become stronger. They became smarter. They did not merely adapt their bodies. They adapted their environment. When they were too weak to fight large prey, they invented weapons. When they were too slow to catch swift prey, they developed endurance hunting. When they were too fragile to survive harsh environments, they created tools and shelters. The display showed humanity's progression through the ages. Each challenge met not with simple adaptation but with innovation. Natural predators became domesticated allies. Hostile environments became comfortable homes. Even space itself, the ultimate barrier, became their playground. This is why we do not hunt humans, Thanax explained. Not because they are stronger, faster, or more deadly than us. We don't hunt them because they have transcended the very concept of predator and prey. They are something new, something the galaxy has never seen before. He shared his most recent neural recordings, meetings with human leaders, scientific exchanges, cultural interactions. The young hunters saw humans treating former enemies as allies, turning hunting grounds into trading posts, and transforming weapons of war into tools of exploration. In all my centuries of hunting, Thanax continued, I have never encountered a species that views the galaxy quite like humans do. To them, every threat is an opportunity to grow stronger. Every enemy is a potential friend they haven't convinced yet. Every limitation is simply a problem they haven't solved yet. The hall fell silent as the implications sank in. The young hunter's patterns showed the subtle shifts of deep contemplation. But then what are they? Asked another young hunter. If not prey, not predator, what classification do we give them? Thanax's patterns glowed with what might have been amusement. That is precisely the point, young one. Humans defy classification because they refuse to be bound by it. They are simultaneously the weakest and strongest species we have encountered, physically fragile yet impossibly resilient, technologically young yet remarkably innovative, individually vulnerable yet collectively unstoppable. He displayed one final image, a simple meeting between himself and Sarah Chen, now an old woman but still serving as an ambassador between their species. The image showed them sharing what humans called tea, discussing not hunting or warfare, but the future of both their species. The true mark of wisdom, Thanax concluded, is not knowing how to defeat an enemy, but recognizing when you should instead make them your teachers. Humans have taught me more about being a true hunter than all my centuries of actual hunting. They showed me that the greatest prey of all is our own limitations, our assumptions, our pride, our refusal to change. His patterns shifted to a color no hunter had ever seen before, a new marking that represented not victory or defeat, but transformation. Remember this lesson, young hunters. The galaxy is changing. The old ways of predator and prey are giving way to something new. Humans aren't just another species to be hunted or avoided. They are a mirror showing us what we might become if we learn to adapt as they do. They are not our prey, not our enemies, but perhaps, if we are wise enough to learn from them, they might become our greatest teachers. The young hunters left the hall that day with their patterns showing new colors, not the bright glows of hunting success, but the deeper, more complex hues of understanding. They had come seeking knowledge of prey, but they left with something far more valuable, the wisdom to recognize when the hunt itself must evolve into something greater. And in orbit above, visible through the hall's transparent ceiling, a human diplomatic vessel waited patiently to begin another round of cultural exchanges, its very presence a testament to how far both species had come, from hunter and prey to partners in the great dance of galactic civilization.